So, hello everybody. I am HP Holo. I write books. I also interview other people who write books. And today I have Patrick Chiles with me. We're going to be talking about his newest release, which comes out in, is it 2 weeks?
Yep.
Yep,
March
2
5th.
weeks. Interstellar Medic, The Long Run from Baen Books. And so before we dive into my questions and the reading and whatnot, Patrick, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you've written, if you're going to be doing any interesting cons or anything sometime soon, have at it.
Oh, hi everybody. Yeah, well, you've got my name, Patrick Chiles. I've been writing with Baen for like 5 or 6 years now, and I had a couple of self-published novels that I wrote, and it got the attention of Tony Weisskopf, and they picked those novels up in 2016, and then asked the question that you always want to hear, which is, "What else do you have?"
Yes.
And they liked what else I had, and this is my 4th novel with them. I've had short stories in 3 different anthologies of theirs. One was as actually the headline writer, so that was super exciting.
Yes,
That was Les Johnson's Ross 248 project. So most of my books have been hard sci-fi, techno thriller kind of stuff because that's where my head's been. This is my first one that is more out there, fun sci-fi with space aliens and warp drive and stuff like that.
It is
And,
super fun, guys.
yeah,
I'm going to be fangirling all over it the whole time.
I had a lot of fun writing it. There's a lot of humor in it. It's not a comedy, but I had opportunity to poke fun in a lot of cliches and tropes, and both from sci-fi and from alien abduction stories. And we'll get into that. I guess, probably later in the interview.
All right. Yes. All right. So here is my usual spiel. We are some general things to go over. We are giving away a free signed copy of Interstellar Medic. If you would like to enter to win that, I am actually going to remember to put the link in the comments this time because last week's interview I forgot until someone mentioned it at the very end. So coming up, there's the link. You can also pre-order the book if you don't want to wait for it. And also, one cool thing to note on Baen's website, you can actually already buy like 3/4 of the book before release. And so that's what I've been reading today. So you buy it from Baen right now, you get 3/4 of the book, and then you get the rest of the book whenever it officially releases 2 weeks from now. So if you're really impatient for new books, go for it. But there's also all links to the book, links to the contest, links to all sorts of fun stuff in the event description on YouTube and Facebook, wherever you're watching. If you're watching on Twitter and you want to find those links, go to YouTube and Facebook because for whatever reason, Twitter won't let me create event descriptions there. So let's see what else. Oh, we've already got people in the chat. So hey, Linda and Zeckler and Howard, we've already got a good crowd. All right. Do I have any other things to say? I don't think I do. So I do want to get to my first question, though. So whenever my husband read, I want to say it was Escape Orbit, he was absolutely convinced by the space detail that you had a background in space science. And you do not. You
Nope.
entirely researched it. So now I have to ask, do you have a background being a first responder in this one, or was this more really good research?
A lot of research. Well, I'm married to a nurse,
Oh, that
and
helps.
she started out her career as an EMT, so that was a big help. No, everything I write about, I have to do a lot of research. I was an English major.
Ah, yes.
So
you're equipped for research on that respect.
Yeah, I'm good at making it sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Well, you absolutely do, because there were points where I was reading through this book and I was like, he actually has experience with this, or he's faking it really, really, really well. And so I'm already loving it.
I guess I have a talent for putting myself in other people's heads. Imagining
Really
what is this experience like through their eyes, and describing that. Like I spent a lot of time with our local fire departments here. I went on some ride-alongs with the ambulance crews. Got to see a few things. It always seemed like the really big, exciting stuff happened right after I left. So, I'd hear about it from them afterward.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of us just asking a lot of questions, reading the materials that these guys pointed me to, and that my wife Melissa pointed me to,
Mm-hmm.
and again trying to digest all that, and again imagine what it must be like being in their shoes, and describing it. And you really don't have to go into a lot of detail. All you need, you set the scene up, get it from the character's perspective, and work out the action and everything. And the details can be small. It's just little dribs and drabs, right? You don't need a big exposition on how an infusion pump works.
Mm-hmm.
What it does, when they use it, what kind of slang they use. That's important.
Oh yeah.
That's where you really, when you're talking about describing real life stuff, that's where you get the verisimilitude. That's, so the guys at the firehouse who read the early draft of this said the early chapters where she's still on Earth, they said, you got it.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. There's some nitpicking on details, like we don't call this that, we don't use that term, we wouldn't do this in that order, which you'll work those out. But they said the general feeling, they said, you got it, man. So that always makes me happy.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, you're the interviewer.
So I have to ask, on the tours that you did with ambulances, with firefighters, what were some of the things that you experienced in terms of the kind of jobs they went on or the kind of runs they went on?
There are a few. I got to see some really interesting stuff. Really, I got to go on some really mundane runs, and then see some things that were a little more exciting. There's a lot of mundane. They call them the frequent flyers, the slip and fall stuff, the people that call every time they get a stomach ache or a headache. And
of course.
But yeah, no, I learned, like I said, I learned a lot from them, and you learn a lot just talking to these guys too.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the experiences they've had, because some of them were involved in incidents that were actually in the news here. And a couple of them were incidents that actually made national news. I won't go into the details of them, but talking to the guys who were actually there on scene and hearing it from them firsthand, that was really enlightening. I always had a lot of respect for the people that go out and do these things, but seeing it firsthand, it's different. It's like, I liken it to the military, which I was in for a few years. You can't really understand it till you do it. But I did the best I could to understand it.
Yeah, I forget, which branch of the military were you in?
Marine Corps.
Nice. I've got a few relatives in the Marines, so. All right, so now I want to talk about the opening lines before we go into your reading. And just you guys, I sat down to read Interstellar Medic earlier today. I always wait until the day of interviews to read books, or like the week of, so that it's fresh in my mind and I can fangirl properly. And so I sat down, I had my little drink, I was all cozy under my blanket, and I read the first 3 sentences of this book and had to get all out of my cozy space to go into the living room and say, Jacob, you have to hear these opening lines. Because I love the way you introduced this book. Oh, before we do the reading, though, I actually have a question in the comments. Glenn says, my daughter just graduated as an EMT, working to paramedic. Is there anywhere that he can buy her a signed copy? Do you sell them online, or do they mostly just have to find you at cons? Because it's not out.
I don't sell them online. I mean, they all get sold through the publisher. So I don't have any signed copies that are for sale. So yeah, I won't get into the details of that right now. I need to think this through and work something out. I actually just noticed your email the other day, Glenn, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to go about doing this. So I won't go into too much detail, but things here in Casa de Chiles have been really, really busy and hectic for about the last 3 or 4 weeks for a lot of different reasons. And Some of it the day job, some of it other stuff. So I'm barely keeping my head on straight and remember to put my pants on in the morning right now.
Remembering to put the pants on is a very important thing. So, all right. You said before we started that you wanted to read from the opening of the book, which I think is perfect because it sets up everything so well. It's a great scene. And so I am going to let you go into it. And I guess you can do whatever setup you want since it's the opening of the book. It doesn't require all that much.
Mhm.
But yeah, so have at it. You guys get to experience the first scene of Interstellar Medic.
All right. Gather around the fireplace. Need a little courage here.
What are you drinking tonight?
This is Angel's Envy bourbon.
That is definitely more exciting than what I have. I have water with some mysteriously colored flavor in it.
Yeah, readings are hard when it there's definitely a reason why we hire professional voice actors to do the audiobooks.
Oh yes. People say they want to hear me read my stuff aloud, and I'm like, no, you really don't.
And I would be happy to talk about audiobooks and that experience and that whole process later.
Oh, certainly.
It's super exciting. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to start right from the beginning. Delivering babies is the highlight of a paramedic's career, a welcome respite from the daily parade of illness, injury, and death that otherwise defines our existence. Bringing a new life into the world is transcendent, a near magical affirmation of our profession's essential goodness, a welcome reminder that we are more than mere escorts for the dying into whatever afterlife awaits them. All of that happy horse shit goes out the window when the baby has tentacles and fangs dripping with toxic goo.
Sorry, I just had to pause. I love it so much. The tentacles make it. The tentacles and the fangs and the baby. Okay, you can have the screen back now. I love it so much.
Yeah. It's nothing personal, mind you. The kid can't control itself, and I certainly can't expect much from the parent at this point. She, or he, with this species it's interchangeable, is strapped to a gurney in the back of our bus with her tentacles pinned beneath a makeshift concoction of restraints and her fangs safely concealed behind a breathing mask. Childbirth can drive a human mother half crazy, but a hextopus in labor is like wrestling snakes, and there's no referee to call foul when the teeth come out. At this point, I should mention hextopus isn't what they call themselves, but it's the best English classification I can think of for a species with 6 elongated retractile limbs. If an octopus has 8 tentacles, then 6 makes for a hectopus. If I paid better attention to Latin in college, I could probably come up with a more scientific sounding taxonomy, but at this point, I'm just trying to get the baby out alive. Hexapods are technically amphibious, but they strongly prefer water. Our immediate problem is that we're in a standard atmosphere of oxygen and nitrogen, which is what most union races breathe, but I'll save the exobiology lesson for later. This species normally gives birth underwater, and I'm told it goes a lot more smoothly in their natural environment. That makes sense, and it also explains why the mom-to-be is damn near out of her mind right now to the point of being dangerous. I take my eye off the job at hand for a split second to check the cat's cradle of cargo straps holding her back. Each of her tentacles is a couple meters worth of pure muscle and could tear me in half like prying apart a mollusk. The oxygenated fluid we're pumping through her mask calmed her down enough for us to get her into our cobbled-together restraints, so at least I don't have those appendages to worry about. The baby is another matter. It won't be nearly as strong as a full-grown hextopus, but it's absolutely complicating things. Thankfully, our scanners show the head is coming first, because I don't want to reach up into Mom's birth canal to wrestle with a writhing mass of tentacles, much less have to deal with the fangs. Our anatomy instructor warned us these things come out instinctively snapping at whatever's close, which in this case is me. And while they're not venomous, their saliva is toxic to most other races, including humans. The normal reflex would be to close my eyes as I reach into the birth canal, but that's something I learned to control a long time ago on the farm. I tell myself this is no different than delivering a calf, while the carbon flex protective sleeves I'm wearing ought to shield me from the pointy parts and their poisonous slime. I find the head, and here's where I have to be extra careful. The birthing process is a lot less complicated underwater, where mom naturally spits the baby out when the time comes. Here they have to work at it because they're averse to delivering in open air. That means going elbow deep up her birth canal, finding the baby, and pulling it out. It's almost all head, but for those flailing tentacles. And my hands quickly find something about the size and shape of a football. I start massaging it toward me, gently coaxing it along with my fingertips. Thing is, you have to be cautious with the head because these creatures are smart. And I don't mean smart like trained horses or dolphins. Hexapods are fiercely intelligent, beyond human intelligence, in fact, beyond a lot of other union species. Their method of communication is so subtle as to have been overlooked for centuries, at least by my notion of time. It wasn't until they built vehicles to finally leave the confines of their underwater homes that the powers that be realized these beings were deserving of membership in the Galactic Union. The Union's not quite sold on humans yet, which is why I'm here, but that's another story. I feel my way forward until my fingers move past the crown and the first baby tentacle wraps itself around my hand. This is not a pleasant sensation, and I fight the urge to recoil in fear and disgust. Before long, both of my hands have these wormy little appendages wrapped wound tightly around them, and I'm safe to start applying some force. So I take a deep breath. My translator tells mom to do the same in a burbling speech I can't begin to understand, and I pull back in one smooth, continuous motion. In my hands is a writhing infant hextopus, its skin frantically changing colors as it reacts to the shock of its new environment. This kaleidoscope of hues is a baby's silent cry as it emerges into its new world. Mom begins changing colors and rhythm with her baby. This is how they communicate. There's no time for me to marvel at their strange symbiosis, so I place the baby in a makeshift tank and am immediately rewarded by its tiny tentacles releasing their death grip on me. The newborn is now in its natural environment, and I watch its colors settle into calmer shades of pink and blue as it breathes for the first time. I realize I've been holding my breath as well and collapse onto the floor with an exhausted groan. I've been on shift for barely an hour. Back home, this would have earned me a stork pin for my EMS uniform. I don't know what the union awards for delivering an alien squid baby. So I think that's a good place to leave it off.
Oh, yes. I love it so much.
Yeah.
And
Give you an idea of what this book's all about.
Oh, yeah. And all of it is just as fun as the first scene. And one thing I really love about it is the aliens she's dealing with in this scene. Like, they are genuinely alien. I love that they're like, one of the things that I just love tentacle tropes in aliens. It's like automatically, if you want to make something weird, give it extra tentacles. But there's more to it than that. There's their very mode of communication being alien. And I love the color changing. My cat just meowed outside. Sorry, I got distracted. He gets really, really insulted when he is on the other side of a door. But he cannot come into this room during interviews because he tries to eat thumbtacks off of my bulletin board, and so he's going to be upset back there. So let me know if his noise actually happens to actually happens to reach my microphone. So, because he can be insistent. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying about octopus.
How you love tentacles.
Yes. About the hexapus communication. Like, I love how genuinely alien and genuinely subtle that communication form is, because it's not something I can register on a human level. And they also had some other communication differences, didn't they? Or maybe I'm thinking of another alien from later in the book. But
yeah, I don't go into stuff with that species very much. I thought it was a great way to introduce it. They are going to play a part in the next book, because this is actually a 2-book series.
Oh, awesome!
So yeah, well, and some of these things I got the ideas from the inspiration from just reading about strange different species here on Earth, and that's one way they think octopi, or I think it's actual octopuses or octopods, whatever, communicate is changing colors.
Yeah.
So
I didn't realize that
I thought that would be a fun little thing to add in there and make it as weird as possible. When I pitched this to Tony, she said, "I want to see real aliens. I don't want to be 1960s Star Trek with blue makeup and a colander on top of your head."
But those are so fun. I do love your genuine aliens though. And which actually leads me to my next question. What thought processes did you go through when you designed the various aliens in the book? Because I'm on chapter 6 or 7 right now, and so I've encountered 2 different species. And one is humanoid, the first one that she meets, and they're humanoid for obvious reasons, because if a hexapod shows up in her house saying, "Hey, you want to be a space paramedic?" she's going to have a very different reaction.
No.
Yeah.
Come on, no.
Than the 2 who do show up. And so how did you decide what weird details to include about these aliens, and also what distinct abilities they have? Because the ones that I've encountered thus far, they serve very specific purposes in the Union relative to things they can accomplish.
Mm-hmm. There was that. I mean, it was kind of part of the character development. For storytelling purposes, species-wise, I guess abilities needed to be a little bit uniform, because there's just not time to go into all the different individuals. You could write an entire book just on one species if you're making it up. A lot of it I based on a lot of alien abduction lore.
Yes.
UFO tropes and stuff like that. So I had a lot of fun with it. There's undeniably something of a Men in Black vibe to this. I don't think there's any getting around that. So you got to own it. So, so there's actually a couple of intentional shout outs in there. So people, well, yeah, I know. We all know what we're doing here.
Oh yeah, I got excited every time I found not a pop culture reference, but a trope or a detail that I recognized, because they're not written like pop culture references at all. They're things where it's like if you know this thing, and you get a little smile because of it.
Yeah, you have to be really careful of pop cultural references because those get dated quickly. And so I started out, like I said, with a lot of the UFO lore. What are the types of aliens that people claim that they've encountered? So there's the Nordics, which I decided these are the emissaries. Okay, and so I came up with the whole backstory of their civilization being kind of on its last legs, and looking for a home because theirs was wiped out. But they find that they've got this unique empathic ability, so that kind of makes them the ambassadors for this Galactic Union. But they were the founders of the Union with the first race they encountered when they were looking for a new home, and that was the Reticulans, which are your classic grays.
Yes.
Or, well, in this case, Fred's a little green man, but anyway.
That was one of my favorite reveals in the scene where she finds what she thinks is a crashed plane, and then goes into it and is fascinated by how advanced it looks and thinking that it's very military. And then she goes and finds the gray arm crushed under a piece of debris, and like still thinks it's human, but then moves it and it's like, oh. Yeah. And I saw the gray and was like, oh, is this going to be classic UFO alien?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. And they're telepathic, and that messes with her head a little bit. And I have to get this out. I promise I have only started watching Resident Alien in the last 2 weeks. I had never seen it before writing this book. And
I knew it existed, but I was just reminded of its existence because I think it's on Netflix now, and it popped up on it. It's one that I need to read.
We've been binging it on Netflix, and it's pretty hilarious. And there were a couple of times I jumped up off the sofa with my arms raised.
Oh yes, definite recommendation.
Something that I had made fun of in my book too. Because let's just get right to the dirty nitty gritty of medicine. The Greys have an anal probe for everything.
I have not encountered this part of the book yet.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to spoil it for you. Well, let's say, that's all the stories. There's sci-fi episodes built around this. There's all kind. That's going to be kind of a little bit of a running joke. That Melanie, the main character, has some problems adjusting to.
Mhm.
Like, what is it with you people?
Some things
Um,
take longer to adjust to in situations like that than others, and that's
oh
one.
yeah. Well, that came out in Resident Alien, and I about fell off the sofa laughing, and then jumped up like took a victory lap.
I'm moving that up my list to watch
Yeah.
of things to watch now.
Um,
It does lead me to my next question, though.
mhm.
Um, as a reader, like I've never sat down and said, you know what? I really, really want to read a book about a space paramedic. It's a really specific subject. And now that I
Yeah.
know one exists, it's like, heck yeah, I put it all over my reading list. So where did the initial idea come from? Because it's very specific.
I honestly don't know. It is one of those ideas that just arrived in my head a few years ago.
Oh, those are the best
Yeah,
ones.
yeah, and so the idea behind it is, and how I pitched it to Tony Weisskopf, who she loved the idea, but told me this is actually 2 books.
Hmm.
So you really need to get all the world building done in the first book and set up who she is, why she's there. Because the book, the second one I'm working on right now, which will be out in about a year from now, is going to be called The Long Way Home.
Ooh, I like
So you
it.
can take from the title what might be going on here.
Mhm.
And she's going to be feeling more and more separated. She has plenty of reasons to want to leave Earth when the opportunity comes,
Mhm.
but she's going to have reasons to want to get back.
Of course.
And because I can't do anything without a little bit of hard science in it, each run she goes on takes her farther away from home, not just in terms of distance, but time.
Ah.
And she starts adding this up in her head and realizes this time dilation thing, because you can't get away from relativity.
Mhm.
I don't, no matter how advanced you are, she starts realizing that if I don't get back at some point soon, Earth is going to be so far gone from what I knew, there's no point in going back.
Right.
So she's going to have some hard decisions to make in the
Mhm.
next book. But as far as, I didn't really answer your question. Again, the idea just kind of arrived in my head a few years ago.
Mhm.
And um, I think it was part of the wanting to tell a story of somebody who's unbelievably, impossibly separated from everything she knows and wanting to get back to it. And as to why the character is female, I don't have an explanation for that either.
You just vibed that way. It's
That was something Tony asked me. He said, "Any particular reason why it's a female?" I said, no, it just made sense to me.
Mhm.
And I think she comes out very well. The women in my life who've read the book think she comes out very
Yeah, I
well.
think she definitely does.
So, I take some encouragement from that. Again, it's back to kind of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and
Yeah.
trying to understand how they experience life.
Do you find that she's very much a character who writes her own adventures and you have to rein her in, or does she tend to follow the plot that you've set out very well? Because
Oh
I
no,
know.
she writes her own adventures, and that's a big part of her character.
Mhm.
Is she tends to get herself in trouble because she
Yes.
charges ahead when
Mhm.
maybe everybody else holds
Fear
back and
theme
she jumps
issues
in
that she
feet
has.
first.
Yeah, I
And
think
that,
there's a point in the novel where it said that she's gotten like 3 demerits for rushing onto scenes before they're fully secure just because she really wants to get to work and get to helping people and whatnot or something. I
yeah.
think it's 3. Yeah. She gets bad news at one point. But we have another question in the comments, and this is from Howard,
Mhm.
who says, "I was able to read an e-arc and loved it. Were you familiar with James White's series?"
Only that it exists. I uh, I haven't read it, so I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but no, afraid not.
One question that I had too, and the main character's name has just fallen out of my brain. What is it again?
Melanie Mooney.
Melanie Mooney. All right, I knew there were M's involved somewhere.
Mhm.
So her background, she's a very well-rounded first responder. Like she has a medical background, she's a
Mhm.
firefighter, stuff like that. What made you decide to not to give her so much experience, and not just say, oh, she's just going to be EMS or she's just going to be a firefighter?
Um,
What made you put
well,
the whole
you'll
thing?
see as you get deeper into the book, it has a lot to do with how she ended up where she is in the first place,
Oh, okay.
and how she is. recruited by this Galactic Union in the first place, also. Because part of the premise is, this Galactic Union is not a big, happy, utopian, united federation of planets. There's a little bit of parochialism. There's some cultural resistance among the different species to provide medical care for somebody outside of their species. There aren't many who do. The Greys, but it's because they've got a probe for everything. But her background was she started out in veterinary school. She was going to be a DVM, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. And things happened that took her out of school and made her change directions that I won't get into because it would give away a little too much. And that stuff all gets explained in the book. But it's that kind of eclectic combination of experiences that puts her in a really good position to do what she's doing.
And that's one of my favorite parts too, the veterinary bit. One point that I really like that you made about her veterinary experience is that when you work as a veterinarian, your patient can't talk to you and tell you what's wrong. And you have to figure it out yourself. And that works just as well for aliens as it does terrestrial animals. And so I thought that was a cool connection. Let's see I wrote my question so fast I can't read my own handwriting. And there's one that I've been trying to decipher this whole time that I think actually just says 2 Whoppers with cheese. I think I wrote my lunch order as one of my questions. Oh my gosh. Okay. Now you said that that you of course like to put hard sci-fi in your stuff, even when it's fun. But I'm curious, what kind of hand wavium did you have to use, if any, to make certain things function? And the thing that comes to mind specifically for me is I have no science background whatsoever. Like my entire science knowledge outside of high school and college comes down to whenever my husband and I are watching movies and suddenly I hear this really dramatic sigh and I pause it and I go, okay, Jacob, what science was wrong? So that's my knowledge of physics context. And so I just finished the scene, or I'm in the middle of the scene where they're in the transatmospheric shuttle, which has a cool design and whatnot. And you have this weird little ball. What was it? The Moscovium?
Yeah, element 115. That's another UFO trope.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I was wondering because it's a trope I haven't encountered before. And so what is that from? Is it just a general trope, or is it something?
It's something that I can't. The guy's name is on the tip of my tongue now. People that follow UFO stuff will probably know exactly who I'm talking about. The guy's been on Joe Rogan a couple of times and claims he worked at Area 51 and in the S4 division. And so to us in the military, we're like, "What, you work in supply?" That's what that is. So it must mean something else with what he was doing. But he claims that there were recovered alien spacecraft, and this highly unstable element was the key to their locomotion. It was how they got around.
Okay.
That when they applied power to it, they found that somebody just commented, Bob Lazar, that's the guy. Yeah. Anyway, so he claimed that when they applied power to this element 115 sphere, I think it was, it had an effect on local gravity.
Okay.
And that's how they moved around. So that's the key to their warp drive. That's their dilithium crystal, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
So,
that tells you exactly how much I know about chemistry and elemental science. Because there was a moment where I was reading where I was like, is this a thing? Why are we not doing this? There's probably a reason why. Is it an energy thing?
Well, it's a real element. I mean, it's there's all kind of things that are predicted that should fill in the blanks in the periodic table that we just haven't either discovered or synthesized yet. Yeah. And this is one that it's a highly unstable element. When it has been synthesized, it's got a half-life, I think, measured in milliseconds.
Oh, okay.
So to have But this guy Bob Lazar claims that there's a stable isotope of it that they recovered from crashed alien spacecraft. So yeah, I didn't invent that. You know, I was more than happy to piggyback off somebody else's fiction.
So whenever the UFO reveals were being made last year, were you taking notes for this novel as well, or was it last year? I can't even remember.
Yeah, it was last year. I wanted to take a note so much as I was paying very close attention.
Mhm.
You know, and I honestly, I don't take as many notes as people might think. I internalize a lot of this stuff.
Mhm.
I kind of have to bring it to life writing.
Yeah.
I really have to get my head deeply into it to, like I said, internalize it. You know, I might put details and stuff, you know, or write in a notebook or, you know, type in my phone in Evernote or something like that.
Mhm.
But you know, yeah, no, I was paying attention to it. I'm not convinced of any of it. There's a lot of talk and a lot of amazing sounding stories, but until we have hard evidence,
Yeah.
and of course, you know, the evidence is all conveniently classified. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it could just as easily be an info op and wanting to cover our tracks for something amazing we've invented. And we don't want people to think we actually have that ability.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
There's actually, so in the comments, there's quite a few mentions of sci-fi medical series, and another one that comes up is Leinster's Medic series. Are you familiar with these as well?
I'm afraid not. No.
Were there any sci-fi medic series that directly influenced this?
If they did, it was unintentional. This was not something that I did a lot of background reading on. Again, the idea just kind of arrived in my head, and I started fleshing it out, and got really excited about it, and
Mhm.
pitched it to Tony. She, you know, and she told me about some of these other series, but once I knew about them, I intentionally stayed away from them
To
because
avoid accidentally
yeah,
copying, sort of. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, I did not want to accidentally lift somebody else's ideas or you know anything else, and that's easy to do.
Oh yeah, it's very easy to do.
Mhm.
There's another one mentioned in the comments, Alan E. Norris's Star Surgeon, and I mostly just bring it up for our viewers. If you like any of those series, you are very likely to like this book. I'm actually curious to check out some of these series too, because it seems like there's just this tiny subgenre of medic sci-fi that I didn't even
Mhm.
know existed. There's all sorts of little subgenres that I discovered. That's it's like, and they've been around for decades, and I just haven't stumbled upon them
Well,
yet.
I'm really hoping this one has a broader appeal
Mhm.
because you know my previous work, you know, it's all hard sci-fi and techno thriller, and you know there's a specific audience for that.
Mhm.
In this, like you said, it seems like it's a really um, specific subject, but it's not. You know, it's not really about Melanie, you know, being a space medic. You know,
Mhm.
that's what she does, but what's going on with her character arc
Oh yeah, it's
is a
very
lot
character
more
driven.
important. Yeah, this is a very character driven story, and the medic stuff is just a vehicle for that. I thought it was a fun way to explore this, you know, this fictional alien civilization that I came up with.
The thing that I like about it is, like, I will read hard sci-fi occasionally, but I find it to be like dedicated hard sci-fi. They tend to be books where I have to like get extra coffee and make sure I'm paying really hard attention so I
Mhm.
pick up everything. And this book manages to balance the hard sci-fi with the character stuff so well that it felt like an easy read, even though I was having to take in lots of information at once. And so I agree with you that I think it has broader appeal just because it's like, I think I'm a very fidgety reader. It's like if I sit down to read, I usually want to get up after 2 pages, regardless of how much I'm enjoying the book. But I sat down to read this, and 40 minutes later, looked over at my watch and was like, "Oh, I've been here this long," and so that's high compliment because I get twitchy all the time.
No, that's great to hear.
Yay! Let's see here. What? Checking our time. Oh, 8:39. We got plenty of time. What was the most challenging part to write? Was there a particular scene or a particular bit of data that
Not
you had to deal with?
not there wasn't any one scene that was in particularly challenging. It was more the Earth-based stuff, getting the all the medical stuff right, and all the other things that EMTs and paramedics would do on scene. Because the first several chapters is just setting her up in her world here on Earth, and so I had to show Melanie on the job, and dealing with humans and not made up aliens.
Yeah.
And even the made up aliens, I get into the reptilians and insectoids and these gas bag beings at this gas giant planet, and I strove as much as possible to base their anatomy and physiology on animals that we have. You think like jellyfish and insects and lizards and stuff like that. Did a lot of research into that, but it was probably the Earth-based medical stuff that gave me the biggest challenge, because the stuff I've written previously, I'm naturally drawn to aircraft and rockets and space flight and astronomy. So the research I do is just reading that I do for fun. This stuff I've already got a pretty good sense about. This medical stuff is not at all, but it was necessary for the story. So I had to lean on my wife a lot for this. Her coworkers at her clinic, one of the doctors that she works with, was a big help. And of course, the paramedics that I talked to here at our local firehouses were a big help. But yeah, that part I wanted to get right, because anybody who does this stuff, for real, is going to read it.
Know when you get it wrong.
Yes, they are going to know, and I do not want to be in that position ever.
Yeah, but that makes your writing all the more impressive too, because you've got at least one really complex scene that she has to go to. I'm thinking of the one with the lawyer.
The highway, the
one really, really bad wreck. And there's a lot going on in that scene in terms of what she has to do to help. And I remember being very impressed by that, because there's a lot of information coming at the reader, in addition to the emotional stuff that's going on in this really, really devastating scene. But all the information flows really well, and it's like I almost felt like I could become an EMT after I read this scene. It was so detailed and so well conveyed. I will not
go take the test, right?
Yeah, because I'm very much the kind of person where it's like I see a little blood and I'm like, I'm gonna go over here and faint a little bit. So that's not my calling in terms of careers. But you capture it so well, and I absolutely love it.
That one scene to get picked over a lot. When I first wrote it, it was stream of consciousness, get it out there, the vomit draft. This is what I want to have happening. Then had to go through and work out the details. My wife was a big help with that. And of course, the medics I talked to here were a big help, and got it pinned down as to how something like that would actually flow. And the feeling that they get when they roll up on a really horrific accident like that. And now they've got to try to bring order out of chaos.
Right. It seems like I had a question and it fell right out of my head again. That's a theme in my brain. One thing I will say, we are coming up on the end. We got about 15-ish minutes left. So anyone who's watching, if you have any questions you want to send Patrick's way, put them in the comments and we'll get to them. My next question: what were you most surprised to learn about paramedic or firefighter, general first responder life whenever you were doing your initial research?
That's a really good question. I don't know I honestly don't know if there was anything that really did surprise me.
Yeah, because your wife's a nurse, so you've heard.
Yeah, and like I said, she started out, her career as an EMT.
An EMT.
So I've lived a lot of that vicariously through her, hearing her stories and seeing the effect that it has on her. I don't know. I guess the whole thing was just really educational. And one thing I did get out of it is um, and this is something I was able to impart, even though I didn't do any work like this at all. When I was in the airline business, I did a lot of shift work.
Hmm.
A lot of rotating days and nights and weekends and holidays, and um, being able to get across the effect that has in your personal life.
Hmm.
You know, regardless of what you do, whether it's medicine, police work, you know, airline work like I did, somebody has to be there at all times.
Right.
You got to have a certain number of people on the job at any given time. So if somebody calls in sick, somebody else has to give up one of their days off to cover, and it gets tough. It's really tough. So
And that's
when you're
reflected in the book as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It really does take a toll on your personal life.
It seems like most of the time when you mention something you've experienced, I can think of a scene in the book that I've read, even just 6 chapters in, and be like, oh, I know what inspired that scene or that detail. Let's see. Oh, let's see. If you're finished with your answer, we actually have another question. This is from Zeckler, and it's how much hard sci-fi is in the book?
Not much.
It is fairly light on the hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like I'm also listening to I'm reading Interstellar Medic, but then I'm also listening to like one of the Honor Harrington audiobooks too. And Honor Harrington is a lot denser than this.
It is.
So it's definitely not David Weber scale hard sci-fi. I find it really easy and fun to read. I mean,
there's some necessary explanations about how certain things work.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to keep that as light as possible. And none of it's based on real technology. The closest it gets is the whole Element 115
Mm-hmm.
discussion. And that seemed plausible enough and it comes out of all the UFO lore that, I ran with it.
The information is scattered really well. I'm actually reminded, I think there was a post on the Writer Dojo Facebook group recently where someone was asking about ideal ways to handle exposition. And this book actually comes up as a good example of an ideal way to handle exposition, because you balance it really well by scattering it in relevant places throughout a very dynamic scene, where plot's going on, and then you get information as you need it. You never have big paragraph blocks of deep, dense info, and I really like that. Let's see here. Do we have any other questions? No questions, but Carrie says, I wish this was out a week earlier because it would be really good for a train ride. And again, he loved the Orbit series, which I have not read, but Jacob has read and loved it. So if you like...
I'm glad you like those. There will be more coming.
Yes, all right.
After I get done with, that's the next book I'm pitching to Tony after I get done with the second in this series.
Nice. And that's one of your more hard sci-fi ones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I had something else to add. In regards to reading it again, I will say that if you go to Baen.com right now, the ebook is up and the e-arc is also up, right? Of course it is, because the book comes out in 2 weeks. So if anybody wants to read it really fast, there's an ebook version, and then the e-arc is a little bit more expensive, and it's kind of the unedited proof version. It's a PDF that you can read, if I recall correctly. And so there are ways to read it now if you got long train trips coming up or any other kind of reading opportunities. Oliver asks, did I hear this was staying at a duology?
Define staying. Yeah, no.
Are there the potential of more books?
There definitely is. So again, when I pitched this to Toni Weisskopf, she said that this is a 2-book deal to tell this story. But again, I'm writing the second book right now, and I already know how it's going to end. Not exactly sure how she's going to get there, but I know where she's going to end up.
That's part of the adventure, figuring it out.
And I already know how the last scene is going to play out, and so I can see easily a way to leave this open for more after the second book. If there is more, it's going to be an open-ended series. There's not going to be a defined story arc. It's so
So a
yeah.
Baen duology, which means we will get 4 or 5.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely see how to leave this open for continuing adventures. No idea what those would be yet, but the possibilities there.
You'll just have to go on more tours and get more ideas. We had mentioned before this, or you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about the audiobook.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yes, I want to hear about the audiobook
I'm
production.
really excited about this. The audiobook is going to be out on the release day along with the ebook and paperback versions, and this is a first for me. Because typically that comes out several months later, sometimes a year or so. But they've been making a big push to get as much of our stuff out on audio as they can. In fact, my second Baen book, Frontier, is going to be out on audio in April.
Oh, excellent.
So, and the same guy narrates that narrated Frozen Orbit and Escape Orbit. Which is great because there's some I asked for him specifically because there's some character crossover between the 3 books.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it keeps it consistent. So yeah, the audiobook for this, I got contacted by one of the production people because they needed to go over pronunciations. Yeah, I painted myself in a corner. I painted myself into a corner big time. Because I mentioned I take the opportunity to poke a lot of fun at some sci-fi and UFO cliches, and one of those is the unpronounceable names that are all consonants and apostrophes, and that kind of bull crap. And it's not full of them. Melanie has a way of reducing all this stuff down to funny nicknames. So as a reader, you're only going to have to endure the big long name one time. And Melanie will say, "How about I call you Chonk?"
I love the names you sometimes choose.
So
Great.
But all this stuff, and some of them have their own languages. Her person, or one of the aliens that ends up becoming one of her best friends, is completely out of left field. You wouldn't expect it. I won't get into much, but she starts learning their culture and their particular language. And so anyway, we had like 3 pages of bizarre words we had to go through.
Oh man.
To tell them how to pronounce it. But the anyway, the guy I was talking to told me that they love the intro in the same way he did it. It starts out this big, eloquent, serious tribute to, the godlike power of medics, and then just throw that crap out the window because here's how stuff really is.
Oh yes, but
yeah,
it's a great.
So yeah, anyway, and the voice actress that's doing the narration, I got to hear some of her samples, and I think she's perfect. I can hear Melanie in her voice, so I can't wait to hear this when the audiobook's out.
That's such a great feeling too. You can always tell when a narrator is really enjoying the book they're listening to. We've actually got an audiobook in production now, and the another publishing company is taking care of it for me. It's one of my indie books, but they just sent me a little clip of the narrators trying to voice one scene, but they keep breaking down laughing at it so much, and it's such a compliment whenever your narrators are having to struggle to keep it together because they're enjoying the humor of the scene so much. It's wonderful. Let's see. Oliver says, "Who is the narrator? Can you say yet?"
Yeah, no. It's in fact, if you go wherever you get your audiobooks, whether it's Audible or somewhere else, they have it up there for pre-order, so it'll be ready to go on March 5th. Her name's Jennifer O'Donnell, and like I said, I haven't heard her do this book yet. I don't even have a sample of it, but I listened to her other samples when I found out she was the one doing it. And like I said, I think she's great, and I can hear Melanie coming out in her voice. I can just picture it in my head, and I can't wait to hear how she treats this book, because it is. As a writer, it's really exciting to hear your audiobook for the first time, to hear a professional voice actor bring it to life. It is like a radio drama, because we all have that fantasy of, we get the call from Hollywood, and our book's going to be made into a movie and all this. This is this is the next best thing.
Mhm.
Having
It
it
really is.
dramatized. Yeah.
There are actually audiobooks of ours, of Jacob's and mine, where I prefer the audiobook version to the print version we released, because the narrators do such a good job with them. And yeah, there's nothing like a good audiobook.
Yeah, and I like listening to them because I don't listen. Okay, I don't listen to audiobooks really. I listen to the ones of mine that have been recorded, and that sounds like an ego trip, but there's a reason for it. I enjoy reading more than listening. I get more out of it reading. But when I'm listening to somebody else dramatize my own stuff, I
Mhm.
think about it in a different way,
Oh
and
yeah,
it is how I write the next book.
yeah.
So I'm not listening to it to get off on the eloquence of my own words. It's it's oh yeah, that sentence went on way too long.
Yeah, I listen to audiobooks similarly, and I primarily use it to keep up with series continuity.
Mhm.
Because when you've written a lot of
Yeah,
books in a series, it's really easy to forget just miscellaneous details you've put in previous books. Like, you remember the big stuff, of course, but tiny details can sometimes derail an idea. That if you have this one throwaway detail in book one, sometimes it can affect something you want to do in book six, and you have to figure out how to deal with that. And so, but there's definitely something to hearing your work read as well. And one of the things that I do when I'm editing actually is to read my stuff aloud before I do the that's kind of my final edit, because you notice different mistakes when you read aloud versus when you're just looking at the page. And so it's interesting how it works in the brain and
yeah,
whatnot.
it does. It comes off completely different. You can read it, and on the page, it looks perfect. In your head, it sounds great, but to hear somebody read it, and you realize, that went on too long. That
Oh yeah.
dialogue could have been a lot punchier. Um,
I find it
yeah.
really useful for long sentences and stuff like that. So we have another question for you. Any chance you'll go to confinement next weekend? It's near Nashville.
I'm afraid that's not in the plans right now. As luck would have it, I have almost a solid month of travel for the day job next month.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's rough.
yeah, just in time for release week. Yeah, get to
Of
go on the
course.
road for something else.
Perfect time.
So while I'm on the road, I'm going to be hitting every bookstore in every town I go to. If they have copies, I'm going to go sign them.
Nice.
Yeah, not doing a lot of conventions this year, um, and for personal reasons. It's not that I don't want to, but my wife and I have a lot of travel planned this year, um, and you know you have to balance the budget.
Yeah. And you
So,
can only travel so much before it just gets overwhelming, even if it's for something fun.
oh
Like,
yeah,
even after one con, like, I go so nonstop at cons that even after one weekend, I feel like I need 2 weeks to recover.
oh yeah, yeah. No, you really do, because you're on all the time,
Yep.
and mentally it's taxing. Okay, first world problems, right? But it's the truth. So yeah, this year I'm waiting to hear from Marcon here in Columbus. They've had some um, challenges getting the convention nailed down this year for May. As far as I know, I'm going to be at that, and then planning on LibertyCon in June, as
Yes.
always,
I'll be there too.
and have a couple of events. There's a local event here in Columbus at the Wagnalls Memorial Library. They're doing a local author event. They invited me to be there, and then I was invited to another Ohio sci-fi authors event at a bookstore in Tiffin.
Mhm.
Called Baen Books, and that's March 16th, and the Wagnalls Memorial Library event is going to be April 6th.
Nice. So plenty of chances to get stuff signed. Oh, here's another question from Carrie. Would you happen to be passing through the St. Louis area? Love to grab a signed copy.
Afraid not.
Oh man. Oh well. Maybe some of the bookstores you sign at will sell signed books online. That would be a
Hmm.
cool thing. Because I know that there are several around me that will they have online shops, and they will have specific listings for signed books. And Zeckler says, "Oh, that's near him, 20 minutes away." Well, Zeckler, you can go get a signed book.
Which one?
Or
The
St.
one in
Louis.
Tiffin or the one down here in Columbus?
All right. Well, we are down to, well, it's 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So we will start wrapping up. I had one more question for you, and then we will wrap up the evening. So you've got a book full of UFO and alien tropes and whatnot and homages. What's your favorite alien or UFO trope?
I think the missing cattle.
Mm-hmm.
The missing cattle, the mutilated cattle. I had a little bit of fun with that one too. Like, what is there a galactic beef shortage, or, is it, you guys like raw milk? What's the deal?
Mm-hmm. That reminds me, there was a movie that came out several years ago, Cowboys and Aliens, and one of my single favorite lines in it features Harrison Ford as the villain, and aliens come and like do stuff to his cows, and he just has this really, really dramatic expression and goes, "What kind of man sets fire to another man's cows?" And it's the way he delivers it. I can't do it because I'm not Harrison Ford, but it's a magnificent delivery. And got another question from Oliver. Says, wonder if we can request signed plates for Uncle Hugo's. They ship everywhere and have a massive Baen section already. That's actually a thought.
Yeah, I would absolutely. As many plates as you want for Uncle Hugo's.
Yeah. Signed plates are definitely easier than signed books because they're so much easier to ship. But yeah, well, it is 9:01 now. So thank you again for joining me. This has been a really fun night. And everyone, go pre-order Interstellar Medic. And also I'll put the links in the comments again so they're easy to find. But again, we're giving away a signed copy. So there you go, in the comments now. So if you want to try to enter, do it. I will select the winner, and Patrick will sign and send out the book soon. And so, Patrick, if you want to close us out by saying where, basically any information you want to reiterate, where we can find your books, stuff like that, and then
where all fine books are sold, March 5th. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all your independent bookstores, Books A Million down south. They've been really good about carrying my titles when the new releases come out. And as I said, it'll be out in ebook, paperback, and audio on March 5th.
Yep. So something for everyone. Well, thank you again for joining me. And thank you everyone in the comments. You've all been great and had some really good questions. And for those who like to hang out and watch the show, I'm going to be interviewing Lydia Scherer of the Love, Lies, and Hocus Pocus / Lily Singer Adventure series next Saturday. So you can join us for that as well. But till then, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you guys for listening and watching.
Yes, thank you all. We love you.